instance, you know, when I was at school many, many years ago, we didn't even have homework in primary school. You know, I know. And they look at me like, what? They're like, I have 6 hours of homework every night, you know. And I just feel like they work harder and longer than us, and they don't even get paid for it.
You know? That's so true. Hi guys, today I'm really excited to have another very special guest, Kirsty, with us today. Kirsty, can you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Kirsty and I'm from the UK. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, Kirsty, so this is your first year with Eureka, but you've had a lot of experience prior to that in mainland China. Can you kind of give us your teaching resume?
Sure. Well, my teaching journey started back in 2009 when I was a teacher in Inner Mongolia, where there are hardly any foreigners, there's hardly any English, so it was a real culture shock for me. I was teaching at a training center there, and a kindergarten as well. And then I was there for about 7 years, teaching English to children and adults. So after about 7 years, me and my partner moved to Qingdao in Shandong province, where we taught at a training center again and an international kindergarten. So I think after about 10 years in mainland China, we were thinking, okay, it's time to try somewhere a little bit more international. And Hong Kong is a place that I always wanted to come to. I came here when I was 17, and since then I've just been obsessed with this city, as everyone knows. So last October, we decided to take the plunge and move to Hong Kong. So now I'm teaching at a primary school and I love it.
Oh, I'm so glad. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
So you said you were mesmerized by Hong Kong. What about Hong Kong drew you here?
I think it's probably the thing that attracts a lot of people, the mix of like East meets West, that kind of culture, the fact that you can delve into history and get some traditional street food, but also you've got like the English as well if you need it. So it's especially as I'm from the UK, there are a lot of things about Hong Kong that are similar to the UK, like the signs, you know, the like the road signs and things like that. It reminds me of England, but at the same time, it's like a new taste of Asia as well. So, and the people are lovely and the food is delicious. And I think it was also the skyscrapers. But I'm from a little town in the UK, and to see these huge skyscrapers was mesmerizing. So I think it was just a little bit of everything that Hong Kong has to offer.
Nice. So now that you've been living here for a few months, does it meet your expectations? Are there any like culture shock?
It does meet my expectations very much so. Like I love living here. I love the convenience. I love that you can just get the MTR anywhere, or there's a bus or the light rail or a taxi. So in terms of convenience, like I love it. I also love the food. My favorite food is dim sum, and the Hong Kong milk tea as well. So yeah, no, it absolutely meets my expectations.
Oh, that's awesome. What's your favorite flavor of milk tea?
Oh, there are so many. To be honest, I quite like just the plain one. Just, you know, milk tea, evaporated milk, and I'm happy.
Nice. Hong Kong does do really good milk tea.
It does. It does.
So you go to like a cha chan hang, like a Hong Kong local restaurant, and have that?
Absolutely, yeah. And we went to a really traditional one in on the island as well. And it was just the ones where you pick your food from the trolleys and they stamp it, like things like that. We really like the authentic culture.
Wow. It sounds like you adjusted really well and you just assimilated into the culture and experienced the local culture. That's really great. And obviously you assimilated well because you have a lot of international experience, and you were in China for a long time before this, mainland China. And so tell me a bit about that, because we do have a lot of teachers coming in from mainland China to teach in Hong Kong. In fact, I taught in mainland China for over 10 years myself. So I remember like when we talked about that in our interview, I was like, yes, you know, like, we share common experiences. So can you tell me a bit about like your experience in mainland China? Was Inner Mongolia and Qingdao really different from each other in terms of the education and the culture?
Yes, they were very different. So the culture is the first thing that I noticed that's a difference. So Inner Mongolia, although it's a province of China, it borders Mongolia. So there's quite a few Mongolians living there. And all the streets, the signs, you can see everything written in Chinese and traditional Mongolian that goes down. So So that was really interesting to see. They have a subway now, and they have the announcements in English, Chinese, and Mongolian as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's not far to go to the grasslands. You could spend a night in the grasslands there. So you felt like it was a blend of Mongolian and Chinese culture, which was really, really nice. And then when we went to Qingdao, obviously it didn't have that Mongolian culture, but it had its own culture where the beer factory, where the Olympic sailing activities were. And obviously they eat a lot of seafood as well. So they both had their own differences, but it was really nice to experience different cultures, even though it was in the same country.
Nice. I do remember the food in the different provinces were amazing and very different.
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of teachers do say they come to Hong Kong because it's very international. There's English everywhere. So can you tell me a bit about that difference, like between your experience in either Qingdao or Inner Mongolia and in Hong Kong, like, because you landed first in mainland China. So was there like any culture shock when you were there as compared to Hong Kong?
I think there was a much bigger culture shock when I went to Inner Mongolia. Firstly, it was the first time in a new country living abroad, and it was also a third-tier city. So as I said, there was very little English, very few foreigners. Fortunately, at my school, we had a good group of teachers who were all new. We all came from abroad, so we really were like a family. We stayed together, we hung out together, we cried together. So I think having that expat family really helped. Whereas coming to Hong Kong, I feel like there isn't that expat closeness that you had in the mainland. But because there are so many expats here, you don't feel like you need to have that really close bond with people, because when you're outside, you know that you're in an international city. So for me, I think that was different to when I moved to Inner Mongolia for the first time. It was like a different kind of culture shock. But this one was a much easier transition than Inner Mongolia, for sure. And in terms of, if you're interested to know in the differences of teaching as well, there's quite a few differences in teaching between here and the mainland. So for example, the students' level of English is higher here, I've noticed, especially on the islands. I feel like I can have in-depth conversations with the students because, well, Hong Kong's an international city, there's more freedom of internet, students are exposed to more, social media sites online, so they're having conversations with me about things that I don't even know is on TikTok yet. So it's nice to have that interaction with students that I didn't have so much on the mainland. Maybe you could have it one or two really good students, but here you can really immerse yourself in their lives and their interests, which is, it feels like I have a good connection with them.
That's really nice. I did notice that too. Like I used to teach college kids in the mainland, and when I came here, I looked at the curriculum and said, it's too hard. Like, how are they going to understand? And then I looked at the students. I'm like, wait, they are interacting at a different level. So yeah, it was very different.
I know, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it does depend on the schools.
I agree.
So my partner's at a school up in the New Territories, and he says the level of English is lower compared to on the mainland. So it really does differ depending on the location.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it does differ on like the school banding, like the school ranking, how good they are. And again, we're sharing based on our personal experiences.
Yes.
Mainland China is very broad. It's a very large place. And Hong Kong too has like different schools. So this is just our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. My personal experience. I should say that before I answer everything. It's based on my experience.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But I hear you on that. I have so many different questions both on culture and school. And so I wanted to start with culture first because you started sharing with culture first. And I remember I can resound with what you were saying. Like we had a really close-knit community where I was in China too. But one thing was I remember my friends were always being stared at. Like I wasn't being stared at because I look Asian, but everyone else was, and people would take their cameras out and take pictures of you. Did you have that experience?
I did. And to be honest, that is partly why we moved to Hong Kong, was because after 10 years of being on the mainland in smaller cities, you do get noticed a lot. And when you go out, you sort of almost have that, are people looking at me? Are they staring at me? And so it can play on your mind a little bit. For the first few years, it didn't bother me. But after a while, it's like being a celebrity. You just want to go and buy your vegetables without being bothered, So it is, you do stick out more, especially since the pandemic, when a lot of foreigners did leave China, and it feels like there aren't as many. But in Hong Kong, I don't get that at all. It's so nice to go out and you look around you and you see faces from all over the world, and you feel like you belong.
Right. Yeah.
So in Hong Kong, I feel like I belong more. I'm treated as someone, as a resident, someone living in the city, someone who's part of the city, not just a foreigner living there, like, to teach. So that is a big difference that I've noticed and felt.
Yeah, I hear you. I used to have friends who would like hide in their rooms because they were so overwhelmed, or like wear sunglasses to go out because they're just like, there's too many pictures. On the other hand, I did have a friend who was really funny, and he was like, no one's noticing anymore. I'm not special anymore. When he went back to the States, he's missing that special attention.
I had friends like that who loved the attention, and if you went out with them and they'd be trying to get attention, and then you'll be like, please stop, please, I don't want to be noticed anymore. So as like the expats are different too. Some love the attention and they play on it, whereas some, they just want to be left alone.
Right.
So
Live a normal life.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And I am very curious too about the teaching side, or like students' personality, because again, this is just based on my experience. I was teaching like college kids in the mainland, and they were like really, really sweet and really, really well behaved, even though they were very low level. And I worked for Eureka once I came to Hong Kong, so I've been observing classes, but I haven't been teaching, whereas you've like experienced teaching it. Do you find a student's personalities different? Based on your school, obviously, it's just your school experience, but how's that like?
You're right. Here, I do notice their personalities more, not only because they can speak more English, but because they are speaking in different accents. So here I've got some students who've got the most American accent you will ever like hear. And then you've got some who are a bit more British. And some who've actually got a bit of an Australian twang as well. So here you can see it and you can hear their personalities as well. Whereas on the mainland, they had more of a Chinese accent, speaking English in a Chinese accent, you know. And also here, because not only they don't see you as just a foreigner, they see you, oh, you're from England, so I know this, this, and this about your culture, you know. Whereas in the mainland, they would see you as just a foreigner and be like, oh, you're a foreigner, so you celebrate Thanksgiving, right? And you're like, I'm actually from England, so I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. So they don't pick up on those differences in culture so much in the mainland as they do here as well.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
That's true. I hear you. I think I had a similar experience too. And I think it's because maybe here, parents are so focused on their kids' education, exposing them, and we like a lot of our students, especially those in schools like yours, they take their kids off on vacation, you know, overseas, like every summer. And so they were just exposed to so much, and they know a lot about that. And they also watch specific TV shows, I guess, and TikTok, like you said, or YouTube. So they have like more exposure to that.
They're using slang that I don't know. They're using words, and I'm like, is this English? And they're like, oh, it's Gen Z talk or Gen Alpha talk. And you would never hear that on the mainland. But here you see it and you're like, well, I feel like I'm actually teaching back in England because these students are just, they know so much about the culture and you know, news and what's happening in the world. So yeah, it's really a big difference.
That's very interesting. I don't know if you had this encounter in the mainland or in Hong Kong, but I used to teach a film class in China, in mainland China, and my kids were using words from movies that you don't actually use in real life. So I had that problem when you talk about like Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
Yes.
I'm like, you do not say that to anyone ever. That's like movie quotes, you know.
That's true. That's true. I'm teaching drama now, and the students have to come up with a script and they have to perform it. And I'm going through their scripts, and I'm like, you can't actually use that words in a performance, you know, or they'll just write some slang words. And I'll be like, where did you hear that? So you're right. They watch all these English films and they absorb all these new words and sentences that we don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like coming here, I need to keep up more with social media and new words. I didn't have to worry about that on the mainland, you know.
Very interesting. Yeah. What about in terms of classroom management? Do you feel like you have to use different styles of management, or are they pretty similar?
Quite similar. I mean, the class sizes are a little bit smaller here in the local schools than they are on the mainland. So I did teach at a primary school for a short time on the mainland where there were over 60 students, you know, and getting their attention can be quite a challenge. But they were quite well behaved because the teachers were strict. So if the Chinese teacher was there, you know, I just had to like clap my hands because if you shout, you'll lose your voice after a little while. So you'd clap your hands and the Chinese teacher would look at them and they would just nothing, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah. But here, I feel like they're a little bit maybe cheekier. you know? Or maybe the teachers aren't as strict, but I do feel like they, you know, you ask them to be quiet or you clap their hands and there is still some talking, you know, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we're nearly finished, you know, and so it is more challenging here with management, I think, but at least you can use the language to explain to them, you know, oh, you need to wrap up your activity now, we're going to be doing something else, and they'll understand. So communication is more of a tool that I can use here, whereas on the mainland, they wouldn't be able to understand what I said. So I had to just rely on the Chinese teacher more.
Very interesting. Is there a difference in how much people volunteer or students volunteer in the different cultures? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
They are more happy to volunteer here. Like here in schools, they've got English ambassadors, they've got prefects. Sometimes I do assemblies and I need a couple of volunteers to help me, you know, present the assembly, and quite a few children will be like, oh, I'll help, you know, whereas in the mainland, they're really shy about using their English. They're not as confident here. So I felt like maybe just one or two would raise their hands and help me, whereas here I've got a whole bunch of students who are willing to volunteer. So I think it comes down to confidence. You know, in their day-to-day life, they're using English more, so they're just naturally more confident, naturally more comfortable using English. So yeah, I think that's definitely something I've noticed too. Now that you brought it up, I think yes, there are definitely more students who are willing to volunteer and use their English with me.
Nice. Yeah, I was just asking out of curiosity because when I taught college kids in the mainland, I did realize, you know, like they're like really sweet and you know, but I had to call on them and encourage them and be like, you're gonna get extra points, you know, like raise your hand. And when I came observe classes in Hong Kong, I thought, oh wow, these kids are volunteering all the time, which is actually different from when I grew up in Hong Kong. It was still pretty shy compared to when I was a student in America. Like just, I think there's still, it's like a spectrum, I wonder. Like I had a teacher from the UK earlier, we interviewed him like a year, 2 years ago, and he said like students there were trained from kindergarten to be like just more proactive. So he actually found Hong Kong students to be more passive. But then I think it's all like cross-cultural comparison, right? It's all just relative.
Yes. If you're comparing them to America, maybe they are more passive. But if you're comparing them to the mainland, they're more proactive. So it does depend again on the school or the location.
Yeah, and the teaching style. Because I can imagine like having 60 in a room, like what your experience in mainland. And I remember when my students told me that, I'm just like, how can the teacher manage the class?
There are limitations to what you can do, really. I mean, in that style, it's more teachers standing at the front of the board, they dictate, the students take notes. There's very little interaction between each student and the teacher. You know, whereas in the smaller class, you have the time to interact with them more and more, find out more about them. So I do prefer the smaller classes here, even though I still don't remember all their names. But I can recognize their face, you know, and I know, oh yeah, she likes to talk about this, or her personality is more like this, you know. So I do like the smaller classes here.
Nice. And by smaller, you were talking about 20, 30, right?
Yes, 20 to 30, which doesn't sound very small, but compared to the mainland, yes.
I love that, because I'm just like, you know, teachers coming in from the States or UK might be like, those class sizes are huge, but then you came from teaching in Mainland China where the class sizes are ginormous. You know? That's
it. Different perspective. You know.
Totally. What about curriculum? Do you find the curriculum different, or even like school management, school culture? Have you experienced any differences?
So in the school day structure, I've noticed a difference. So here, I've noticed, at least from my school, this is from my personal experience, from the beginning of the day, so about 7:30 to lunch, about 12:30, is when they teach like the core subjects. So maths, English, Chinese, history, geography. They do the main subjects then. And then after lunch, they focus more on ECAs, so extracurricular activities. So the students can choose to go to drama classes, music classes, art classes, bit more of a relaxed class, relaxed atmosphere, which I think is a really good idea, because by the afternoon, the students' attention span is just reduced, you know. So they need to have a bit more of an interactive lesson to let off some steam. So I think I like that about Hong Kong, and it also gives the teachers who don't have ECAs a break, so we can do our lesson planning, prepare for tomorrow, things like that. Whereas in the mainland, they would teach the core subjects all day. You know, they weren't so much focused on ECAs, at least from my experience. It was mostly core subjects. Also, the lunches are different too.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the mainland, at least in local schools, their lunches would be 2 hours long. Most of the students would go home for lunch. They would sleep and then come back later in the day, and they would finish classes later, maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Whereas here in Hong Kong, it's more similar to the UK, where lunches are about 45 minutes. So the students will eat their lunch and then they'll go do some lunch activities, and then they'll go home a little bit earlier, maybe 3:30. So in terms of the class, the day structure, there's a difference there, I've noticed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like I like how you mentioned ECA, because that's something, I didn't know to ask my students there, but it makes a lot of sense. Like just what's emphasized and what they were exposed to.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
but I know that quite a few of the students after school, they go to extra lessons. There's a huge pressure on them to perform well in multitude of subjects, isn't there?
Yep.
So I know a lot of the students would tell me, I've got this class after school, I've got this class on Saturday. So that's actually quite similar to the mainland, where they have extra classes in the evenings or at weekends. And again, I think that comes down to parents' expectations and the competition as well, isn't there? I think there's still that competition here in Hong Kong.
Oh, very much.
As there is on the mainland, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think Asian cultures in general, especially South Asians, I guess that's what we are, is like very academic focused. Like, you know, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Mainland China. Yeah. There's a lot of extra tutoring and activities.
Yeah, so I'll tell the students, you know, when I was at school many, many years ago, we didn't even have homework in primary school. You know, I know. And they look at me like, what? They're like, I have 6 hours of homework every night, you know. And I just feel like they work harder and longer than us, and they don't even get paid for it. Yeah.
That's so true. Because when I was in the States, that's like, again, long time ago. There was no homework over the weekends, and I just played. And once I came back, I had this huge backpack, and my mom was like helping me actually like cut my books, because she's like, your back's not used to it. You're too tiny to carry so many books home.
Yeah, I know. You see like the little P1s, like the first years, and their backpacks are bigger than they are.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was even an announcement recently about the school are weighing the backpacks of the students. They cannot exceed a certain amount of weight.
Wow.
Because it's like
hurting their back. Right? Yeah.
And that's I've never heard that before. That was new to me. You know, but I can understand why. You know, they have a lot of subjects and they go home and study a lot. So, you know, I do feel for them. I wouldn't want to be a student now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you never had homework in primary 5, primary 6. No. Just checking. Oh my goodness.
They do now, but it's a lot lighter.
Okay.
A lot lighter than it is here. I think because they don't have that pressure to compete against each other or succeed, you know, because I've learned here that to go to a certain secondary school, you have to pass a test. And then the secondary school will accept those who get higher results. Whereas in the UK, we don't have that. You know, it's mostly based on where you live. You'll go to the local secondary school, and there's not a lot of competition between the secondary schools. Whereas here, I feel like there is, as you said, the banding system.
Yes.
You know, and that of course creates this competition, which means students have to work harder and longer. And I feel for them, because they do say to me, oh, I've got so much homework to do, you know.
Yeah. For sure. My friends right now, their kids are going to primary 1. So all day long, what they're talking about is like interview prep. I'm talking about kindergarteners needing to go to drama courses, English speaking classes, English courses to get into a good primary school, and then to good primary school, good secondary school, and then good university. So it's a lot of pressure.
It is, and the mainland was the same. I taught at an international kindergarten, and the students in K5, like the highest level of kindergarten, they were studying as much as primary school students were, you know, and they're 6 years old. You know, I don't think I had any pressure on me at 6 years old. So I do feel like it's something that maybe needs to change or will change at some point, because the students just don't have time to be children, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's this Again, I'm not the expert, but I remember my college kids in the mainland telling me a lot of them went to boarding school in high school. And so it was long hours. They only went home during the weekend. And they also had like night study class. Whereas in Hong Kong, I think we don't have boarding schools a lot. We have like a few, just like that. So most kids go home afterwards.
Yes.
And we don't have school on Saturdays, Sundays usually. Whereas like my college kids were telling me that in high school they were studying on Saturdays and Sundays and evening classes too. Because my reaction was the same. I'm like, where's their childhood going? Like,
It's all exam, study, you know. I mean, a lot of parents send their children abroad to study for the Western education, the better education, as they say. And also it's a bit more relaxed as well for them, you know. I mean, that's where my love for Hong Kong came, because I went to a boarding school in the UK. And my friend was from Hong Kong who boarded there. Oh. And then I came out here to visit her and stay with her parents. So that's how I knew about, you know, children from Hong Kong coming to board in the UK. And yeah, so it's just funny how these experiences happen.
Right? Yeah, and then they all intertwine and like change your life forever.
Exactly.
That's really great.